What's up guys, and welcome back to another Pokemon Sword and Shield video. As mentioned, there will be a few more, and this is a big one. I'm not sure how long it's going to go on for, but I'm going to guess a while. It's 30 minutes on the trailer analysis, and I've put a lot of work into the graphics for this video, so if that indicates the length at all, then yeah, that's the sort of thing we're looking for. So this video is going to be an analysis of the Galar region map. Now, usually in past generations like for Alola and Kalos, I have done this when the map was originally revealed, which meant there was a lot of speculation. It was a case of like, oh look, there's a building here, that's cool. Oh look, there's maybe something here, that's cool as well. But there wasn't really much to glean from it because we didn't actually know much about the game. Since I'm doing this one after the Pokemon Direct the other day, we have a bit more to go off of, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be stepping through the map, and then whenever we get to a point where we have seen some gameplay or some, in-game area of that location, we'll jump in and have a look at that screenshot more particularly, so we can analyse the area around it. So that should hopefully allow us to build up a map in our heads of the game space itself. Most of that is around the wild area because we saw a lot of that footage, but there are a few other cities, towns, areas we can also look at in-game screenshots as well. So what I'm going to be doing if I switch over to the map now is something slightly different. So this is going to be a live movement. So normally the thing I would do is I would show like a still image on my screen, but this time I'm doing something a bit different. So we're going to be actually moving around this map live, so hopefully this works for you. So it's a big map for the Galar region. Obviously we're going to start at the bottom because we can generally figure out where we start in the game, and that is in this house down here, and that's actually the subject of our first set of in-game screenshots. Obviously that's our home place, our house. You can see several screenshots from there. One in the very first trailer leads up to the player character being outside it, so it basically confirms it's our house. I've also included a little screenshot there you can see of a Munchlax standing on the ground in what looks to be a house. I'm theorising that's our own house at home as well. I've just got a feeling about it. Usually we have some sort of Pokemon in the house to say hello to. I think it was Meowth in Sun and Moon, for example. So maybe a Munchlax will be there to say hello, is that belonging to one of our parents or something like that. But if we actually take the main shot we see of our house and expand it out so we can analyse that a bit more, obviously we can see there's not too much to it. It's a general house. There's a lot of ivy going on, and it makes sense, I guess, just to give it sort of the rustic theme, and I guess linking with the UK. Not that the UK is covered in ivy, but it's just I guess helps build some character to it rather than just being a standard pristine house. There's not too much to look at there, but obviously this is where we're going to start off. We'll leave through that door when we first begin the game, and we'll move on. So obviously after that we have this little bridge over a river here, leading over to what looks to be, well, a second house here, and that is the focus of our second spot, because that is where we're going to get our starter Pokemon from. Yes indeed. Now we have loads of images here. The first set I'm going to show you is of the area itself, so you can see an overview screenshot here of the pathway next to the property, as well as the house in the bottom right, and a little shed as well as a battlefield. We also have the weather vane on top of the house, which is just a nice little feature. And then we also have Leon, a screenshot of Leon in this area. Yes, he is in this area at some point in the game. I figured it out because you can look at the back. He's got some bushes behind him and a tree behind him, and we'll also see that same tree and those same bushes in a second when we look at the starter Pokemon. To add to that, there's also a wall there which is shared, and the backing is the same as well. So that's confirmed, well, not confirmed, that seems to be the case, that he is there. In terms of the starter Pokemon themselves, yes, this is indeed where we're going to end up getting our starter Pokemon from, because it's where we're going to get them from. So we see several different screenshots of the three starters standing up and waiting and to be picked. There's also a lineup and they run forward. It's our first introduction for it, and it seems like before they line up we also get a little clip of each one doing their own thing. So for example, we have Grookey up in a tree with a berry, and then we also have Sobble crying, it looks like, because it hasn't got a berry, who knows exactly, but Sobble's in front of the pond that is then behind them when they do the lineup, and similarly the tree is the one behind them when Grookey's up in there. Then we also have Scorbunny doing the little fist bump. I'm assuming each of the starters are going to have their own little clip. I think we had a similar thing back in Generation 7 for Sun and Moon and those Alolan starters, although I think that was a generic one. It's a case of like, oh yeah, you pick them up and you say hello, whereas it looks like it's to be a bit more dynamic, because I don't think Sobble is really going to do a fist bump, so it'll depend on what starter you choose as to what you end up doing with it. The final screenshot we have is of course you and your rival or one of your rivals. Who knows how many we're going to have. I think it was mentioned one of in the trailer, so it seems like we're going to get some more. We'll see though. On the battlefield next to that house, so it makes sense that you get your starters together, you have your first battle together, as well as the fact that Hop is actually your next door neighbour, I believe it's confirmed, so it's actually his house. And the fact that Leon's there, who's his older brother, indicates maybe it's Leon giving us the starter Pokemon, not rather than the Professor, for example. It would make sense that Leon would give his brother, young brother, a Pokemon when he comes of age. So maybe he is doing a favour for us as well, and also giving us one. Who knows exactly? It might not be Leon himself. It might be one of Hop's parents, or it could even be the Professor. We don't quite know, but that's the idea behind that. If we then move away from this one and we go back to the actual, looking at what's on the map here, we have the two houses and then they join together to a path leading northwards, which is the only real direction we can go, and that leads up to our first route of the game, which we have indeed seen some screenshots of, because that is route number 1. Yes, so we've got a few different options, I suppose, here, a few different variations of route 1. Or not variations, but angles. The first one being a shot sort of ground height upwards, showing you the path of where it starts, because we obviously see the sign, leading down a little route, not too much, to another bridge, and then obviously a town right at the end there. In terms of what's on Route 1, it's just going to be a few patches of grass, isn't it? And actually it's confirmed, not confirmed, but we can see in a second screenshot of a different angle from above the player's head, you can see some grass off to the right hand side there, with actually a Wooloo just chilling around in the grass. So Wooloo seems to be a Pokemon on Route 1, which is pretty cool. And there's also a little Pokeball you can see down further in the corner, confirming obviously we're going to be picking up items and so on and so forth. That's not a huge surprise. In terms of what we can see past this route, we see our first village, town, something like that. We have our train station on the left side, we'll talk more about that later on. And then we have a few different buildings dotted around, of course a Pokemon Center in the back, a few standard buildings, maybe one of them's a shop, Pokemart maybe, or maybe the Pokemarts again still joined in with the Pokemon Center. That would make the most sense. I don't think they'd split it up nowadays. And then we see on the right hand side there is a different house, which we'll come to I suppose now, of course. So if we I guess similarly look on the map at this town, this village, we can see it's similarly designed to what we saw in the screenshot, but more simplified, and there's also no Pokemon Center. In previous maps we've seen, for example the Alola maps, we've actually been able to see the Pokemon Centers on the map themselves. In this map here they've obviously gone for sort of a more nailed down version rather than having everything in there, so they are omitting certain things like Pokemon Centers, which they really don't need to include everywhere because it's a standard thing. So it's a slightly different design, but we also have still this unique house. So that's what we'll talk about now, because I'm theorizing that this is the Professor's lab, and it's for a few reasons. So if we jump inside it, we can see we've got a couple of screenshots from possibly inside this house. The first being of you and Hop talking to the Professor and Sonia in the kitchen, it looks like. So maybe this is, I'm a bit iffy on where the lab is. I don't think the lab will be where we got our starter Pokemon, because that's Hop's house, but the lab could be somewhere else from here. The reason I do think it's in here though is because if we look at the screenshot of our female protagonist, it's a little circular shot in the first trailer. You can see on the right hand side there are sort of like a large windows on the side of the house, which is similar to the ones on the side of this outside of the house here, indicating that maybe that's the case. There is also a biome sort of globe you can see Sonia's next to, but I don't think that's the same thing as the actual greenhouse on the side. It seems to be an internal biome that maybe they're studying Pokemon in, who knows exactly. So this would be my guess for the Professor's laboratory, but there's another option that obviously we'll come to in a second. Moving back to the map though, of course we can see we've got the train station to the left side and then a route heading off to the right hand side. So I doubt we'd go to the train station straight away, we'd probably head further up the route. So if we then follow that up and along, you can see the route obviously goes along this long area. So it's obviously route number 2, you would assume, route 2, it makes sense. And then we finally end up to this other house right at the end. Now, we can jump in and have a look at some screenshots of this as well, because there are actually plenty. We've seen a lot of different angles of this house throughout the different trailers. We've seen characters running down towards it, we've seen some sort of cinematic looking over it, there's actually a battle we have in front of it at some point, or a couple of trainers in front of it, and then we've got a shot of one of the characters standing in the yard. We also have Leon and Professor Magnolia here, which is interesting because why would the Professor come all the way out to this house rather than staying in her own house? and Leon is here as well, which is again a bit confusing, or a bit questionable at least. So possibly this is the other location I was thinking about for the Professor's laboratory, because it's, I guess, off to the side, different. Obviously the Professor is here, so maybe that's something to do with it. But the question is, why is Leon here as well? One other idea I was floating around in my head was maybe this is Leon's house, because obviously he might not be living with his parents nowadays. But then again, he is the champion, so probably not living right down here in the outskirts of the whole region. So maybe it's the laboratory. You get your starter from, you know, like your rival's house, and you have to head up to the laboratory to get, you know, the Pokédex, for example. That's one option. There's also worth pointing out there's another battlefield outside this house, so we're obviously going to have some sort of battle here at some point. You would assume when you first arrive, because I don't see any reason we'd ever come back. So maybe, as I said in the direct, it was mentioned we have more than one rival, so maybe there's another rival that lives in this house. Maybe Sonia acts as our rival and we obviously battle her possibly. So that's why the battlefield might be there, but it won't be there unless there's a special battle basically that we have at some point. So it's either the Professor's lab or it's something else entirely. We really don't know at the moment, and I suppose we'll have to find out at some point in the future. So if we then head back onto the map again, obviously we can travel our way back along back along to the first town we see here. And again, we're talking about the train station now, so we can't go anywhere else. You know, this is the only place we can go, train station. So maybe after you head to that house, you get given the train pass or something like that, a train ticket would only make sense. And this train station, the train tracks head straight up into a tunnel. So straight away we sort of lose track of where we're going. However, it's a fairly straight shot north through a mountain, and we head to a second train station here. You can see this one is, you know, the same design, except it's the other way around, 90-degree turn. So you can't really tell it's got the clock tower as much, but if you look at it the other way, obviously you can see it's there. Oops. So that's where the train likely heads to. There is a second track which exits the mountain here, you see, and heads up along the side of the wild area into this mountain here. Don't know where that's going. I mean, I can theorize later on, but I guess it's a case of when you enter this train station down here, you choose, say, okay, I want to go to this one or this one. And initially I'm assuming we can only go to the wild area, and I'm assuming the wild area is the first place we head out to the wild area and we get this introduction here, possibly. If it's not, I don't see any point in the train station actually being here, because if you're going to go around the wild area first and then head into it later on, why would you put a train station here for people to head back down? Because they wouldn't, they would just, you know, fly possibly, or whichever, you know, method we use to move around in. So it's questionable. Don't really know why it's there, unless we head straight through here. So I think that's what the case is. We're going to head straight into the wild area. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at all the different screenshots we've seen in the wild area and build up a picture of how it actually looks. The first one we come to is actually right as, you know, basically as soon as we get there, not too long after we, I guess, unlock it or enter it, and that's us on a bike. So the reason I've chosen this one is you can see in the background it seems to be leading up into some sort of alleyway or alcove, and there are actually a few fence gates or fences either side of that entranceway, which indicate it's like an exit to the wild area. And given how, you know, there's no other area in the wild area, makes sense, similar to that, you can see I've put, if we go back to the main sort of map snapshot, you can see I've put a area of view, a field of view on the dot, which I believe is the way that the character is facing in this case. So I think they're facing back, or the camera I suppose is facing back towards where we came out from the train station. So I think that's basically where we first come out into the wild area. Maybe get a little cinematic looking over it everywhere, but I think that is indeed the first place we end up coming to in terms of, you know, the wild area and the first, you know, area we have. Moving a bit further north, not too much further north, we have a second screenshot here, which is an overview of the wild area. I suppose it gives us, you know, shows us most of it, more than we have before. So it's looking out basically just after we've exited. You can see the open sprawling area. We have the first main city up ahead, which obviously we'll look at later on, and then over to the right of that we have some bridges which we can go under and further up to the wild area. But before that we have just general trees and general grass, nothing amazingly special there. But next up is where we get a bit interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to move up a bit here and head to sort of this section here, and we get to learn a bit actually how the height of the wild area works, or, you know, the different levels and slopes and so on. Because here you can see we are looking out off a cliff of sorts over a lake to this huge spike. Now this huge spike is actually on the right hand side of the wild area. and you can sort of, again, it's in your field of view here. We can't see it on the map right now, but we'll get to it in a second. So you're looking over there. So the interesting thing about that is, well, it shows some height level. If you looked at the map itself and didn't really read too much into it, you can see it, you would imagine maybe it's just a flat map. You have 2 lakes and you've got some ways to walk in between them. But it doesn't seem to be the case. You can see, because obviously we're on a cliff here looking over the top, so there's some slopes in here, different heights and so on and so forth. So it's not as clear cut dry as just being there. We can also see, if we look further down over the lake, there's actually a bridge now. Now that bridge is not on the map, so I'll add it myself there. Nice pixelated bridge. Obviously those aren't marked on the map, but we'll add them as we spot them, because as I said, the map is stripped down, so they don't want to put too much detail on it. But you can see there are obviously ways to cross these lakes and so on and so forth without having to run all the way around, because that would get a bit annoying. Onto the map here, we're going to move a little bit to the right towards this spike, as I mentioned. So I'm calling it a spike. It's like a rock sticking out the ground. We're going to move over down next to this one, because we actually get a shot right down from beside it, and it's of the Snova walking through the snow, and you can see the nice big rock to the side of them, and from the angle, from the direction there we're looking and the camera is facing, you can see the clock tower in the city, and obviously that means so on and so forth. We are probably down by the right hand side of this spike looking over. There isn't obviously too much to see apart from that, but you can just see how there is grass around this spike and so on and so forth. It's a larger area than you might be able to glean initially from looking at the map. Then moving a bit further north up along this sort of side by the spike, we get a few more screenshots which actually feature the spike. I'm calling it a spike, I'm going to say spike. So you can see in this next one, the spike is visible in the back side of the shot, just behind the Corviknight, and you can see a few more patches of grass up leading up to that point. So there's some bronzor chilling around in that grass. That's reasonably cool. We get a bit more sense of how the area is laid out and the parts of the wild area that are accessible. And then a second one which we can just about see the spike to the very far left of this image, and also you can see further down the bridge that we marked out a bit earlier. But the interesting thing again is, if we then look at the image in more depth, you can see how the slope works. So this bridge is then led to by a slope which sort of spins around from the map, rather than just sort of coming straight down, and you can see then leading further back up to where we presumably initially leave the train station from, and we see there. So on the map here itself, this little, I guess, bar of land over here that I'm now centering on the camera, that's sort of where we curve down and then use the bridge across. I should turn the bridge on already, shouldn't I? Okay, I've got the bridge. Here's the bridge here, so you can see that you sort of curve down and then cross this bridge to get over onto this side of the land. So moving then obviously to some more images, we're just going to head a bit further up to around here, and you can see, if we obviously pop the next one up, this gives you a different view, which I think is from that sort of bar of land, possibly, but I can't quite tell. The perspective is a bit off here, but you can see in the background you have the bridges which lead north, as well as a second bridge over the water itself, which again we can throw on here if we turn that on, somewhere along there on the main map, as we'll see when we head back to it. You can see we're running through some grass here and a tree, so I think it's on this grassy area that is shown on the bar of land. I don't think it's further back, because obviously we can't be behind the lake because we need to be able to see the bridge, although it may be that. I'm just thinking now that bridge actually allows us to cross the I guess the actual river heading north, which might be the case. I think that's the case actually. I'm going to scratch that. It's probably the bridge up there, so we will remove that bridge because I got this wrong. I've just realised, but that's that's what the whole speculation is about in terms of map speculation. So, but that seems to be so further up along just beneath the bridge to head north. So that gives us a sort of the thing with the map is it's hard to get some sense of perspective and sizing, because it's an artist's impression, I suppose, rather than an accurate pixel by pixel measurement of the Galar region. But we'll move on to a bit more now. So we're going to head over to the sort of the centre here, just beneath the entrance to the city, but not quite in the entrance to the city, because we're going to go fishing, I do believe. So you can see fishing returns, as we already knew, but the camera view is again looking over towards the spike you can see in the distance. So it's a case of, you can see the height elevation here, you can't see any of the ground down there. This is a higher up lake than the one further down below, but you can see the general sense of the area. Then, a bit more after that, similar area actually, you can see one of the female protagonists running towards the the beams of light from the raids. This is hard to place, but I believe it's this sort of area in the map, because if we enhance it, you can see to the top left hand side there is a that sort of leading area up to where you initially come from the train station. So she's clearly sort of leaving the city and heading out back the other way along the wild area. Then we're going to move a little bit further across, not too much further across, just enough to, oh that's too far across, just enough over here to sort of get on top of this area. You can see we have the character whistling out some stuffle, but again you can see in the distance there is that leading area up to the entrance of the wild area, and obviously it's an island in the middle of the lake as well that he's calling across. So that gives you a sense of, I guess it's all about a sense of area and stuff. Before I started this I didn't really know what was where, or how big things were, but now you can see it a bit more. We're going to move slightly further west again, and then we're going to show, I think this is where it's placed, I'm not entirely sure. The berry trees are quite weird because you'd assume there'd be several of them in the wild area, but I can't really see too many of them on the map, because the tree design is either different from the standard tree, or it just renders differently at different distances, so I can't really place it. I'm going to assume it's here, with the camera looking out across this sort of top area of water that's sticking out towards the ruined tower, or it may be on the island indeed in the centre of the lake. Can't be quite sure here, it's a bit hard to tell. But then we move a bit further across towards that ruined tower, not too far, and then we're going to head into the water ourselves, because we get this shot obviously of the Gyarados chilling in the pool in the lake, and again we have another bridge that we can pop on, because it's obviously you can see it on the right hand side of that image. Then if we theorise where it might be, I think it's crossing this section between this sticking out area of land and the other side of the lake, giving you another option rather than having to run the whole way around it. But you can see again to the top left hand side of that image there is the area, the lawn, the plain leading up slowly a bit higher towards, then again the way you came from the train station. But then we're going to move a little bit more interesting stuff, I guess, because we have the ruined tower here. I'm calling it a ruined tower because I think that's what it is. Who knows whether it have any actual significance in the game. It seems to just be a ruined tower. But obviously we have the screenshot here of the Galar, and there's a few other ghost types walking around by this tower, so maybe it's to do with spooky stuff. And the camera seems to be looking past it, looking down around it possibly. We can't really tell because the ruined tower is a bit haphazard, but it seems to be looking around down, possibly towards where the lake is, and a bit further down from there. And then what we're going to do after that, because it's not the most exciting place, is it's quite interesting. We're going to raise the roof up a bit, and this seems to be a cinematic image, possibly when you first enter the wild area, giving you a full overview from the viewpoint of the ruined tower itself. You can see the lakes there, the bridge you would assume, as well as obviously the island there, and then further up again you can see the spike in the background, and finally the entrance to the wild area right in the distance, as well as a good few patches of land we're able to see here, so we can get an idea of land, grass and so on and so forth, get an idea of exactly how it is. And I'm looking now and I think I got the bridge wrong. I think the bridge possibly ends up across the other section of land. There's two crossings I suppose you could make, and I think I've just done it on the wrong one looking at this perspective. I think I have, so we'll just turn it like so and we'll pop him there. I think that's how it's going to go. It's the same idea, rather than having to cross the whole way around the lake, you just have to go over the bridge, which is quite helpful rather than wasting a lot of time. But we'll move on now, and we're going to head back towards the centre of the wild area over here for another screenshot, or another, I say screenshot's the best term, isn't it? Looking north, and this one allows us to get similar before, but it gives us a better shot of all the bridges leading up through the centre of the wild area past the first city, and that's where we're going to go. We're not going to mess around with cities quite yet. We're going to look more exactly at the wild area itself, because it's all fairly similar in terms of what we're looking for. So we're going to head up. As we mentioned, we sort of saw the bridge earlier, the wrong bridge, but then we have another screenshot which I believe is beneath or between possibly these two bridges here, because we see in the screenshot of the Seismitoad one, I'm going to refer to it as the Seismitoad one, we see on the left hand side there is one bridge, and on the right hand side there is another bridge. Now the two bridges we actually see on the map are of different designs. One is the train bridge and one is just a pedestrian bridge, I assume. So I don't know why we can see two of them It might be that again there's only one shown on the map, but there are indeed more than one because of simplicity's sake and so on and so forth. But you can see, between the two of them there is a bit of area around, more grass and so on and so forth. There is a section of water on the left hand side. Yet again, that could be a case of it was left out on the map because you don't want to clutter stuff, or it could be the fact that it's currently raining, so when it rains in the wild area maybe more pools of water appear and maybe Pokemon can spawn from them. Who knows exactly, just an idea. But after that we are going to head further north to explore a bit more of the interesting stuff of the wild area, the varied areas, and we're going to go past this extra bridge even further up here. You can see it's another pedestrian bridge, and just past that you can see the character running towards the city in the horizon, as well as obviously all the different landmarks in the wild area itself. We've got leaning rocks, we've got stacked rocks, we've also got the red spire for the raid battle, and so on and so forth, so there's plenty more to explore here. And the first thing we're going to look at is actually these stones themselves, because we see them in a few different cases. So we see a sandstorm with a few stones sort of leaning over with the Rhydon, but we also see two other ones, one being the Avalugg with stones leant over and so on and so forth, and also the raid battle seems to, or one of the raid battles areas seems to be in the centre of those rocks. Now obviously the rocks on the path are leaning inwards, they're not in a circle, which the other two seem to be. I couldn't find anywhere else on the map at least which had a circle of rocks facing inwards. There may again be details on the map that have been left out, and it may be that those I guess stacked rocks are around in those areas and not shown on the map themselves, but it seems to be a similar area at least, if not between these, this actual path of rocks, maybe across to the side. You can see with the Avalugg image, it's quite nice to see the curve of a cliff of some sort around the back, so it's clearly tucked away in a corner somewhere, so it's possibly here, or it's possibly just based somewhere else. But we're going to move on to the woods, and we only see the woods properly in one photo again of a sandstorm, so this is probably the area that's prone to sandstorms. Maybe the southern area is prone to snowstorms and raining, who knows exactly. It might be different pieces of weather in different areas of the wild area, or it could be all in one, we don't quite know, not too many details on it. But we can see running through trees here, not too much we can glean from that apart from the fact that it's a sandstorm and we can't really see too much at all. We're then going to head across to a bit further east because there are some more rocks. You can see two stacked together, and we have one shot here of the hippopotas in the grass with those rocks lent together in the background. Of course you can see the camera is facing back towards that city because we can see the bridge and then the clock tower in the distance. So the leaning rocks and the stacked rocks and so on and so forth are quite confusing because there are obviously a few different sets of them. They might not all be on the map, they might all be visible in different places in the game, but we can see here it's quite a large area for looking from this viewpoint. And when we go back to the map here, obviously on this thing as well, you can see the dot is kind of shifted right back up against the wall, up against the cliff face. I'm not too sure if it'll be a larger area there, but it does seem quite confined. Again, possibly due to the creative tendencies of the person who made the map. Then we're going to head slightly further north up onto, past this, I guess, stacked rock section, who knows exactly what this is about, onto the slope heading up towards the city, and we're going to then turn around and look south past this Corviknight to see the few different things. We see the stacked rocks again, we see leaning rocks, we see so on and so forth, and then a few bridges and finally the clock tower. So that gives you a shape and idea of the area that we came through. So it's quite large, I would say, and might have more details than are obviously initially visible on the map here. But then we're going to shift a bit further across to the west hand side, or to the left hand side, and we then face back towards the east, so we do a swivel basically, and you can see this is highlighting the raid platforms, but you can see looking back you have the trees on the right hand side, you have that weird rock formation on the right there, and you can see the height difference yet again. It's a bit easier to actually glean from the map itself because it has the cliff faces, but you can see there is a slight height difference in the wild area itself, which is good. Verticality is always good to make things more exciting to explore. As well as this though, we also have another shot of a water pool, which, if we scroll over to the left hand side, is up here right in the corner. And obviously this is of Milotic, Mantike and Mantine, and your bike riding, and you can see facing back towards the city there, so another lake, and it might be the fact that there is actually stuff not so hidden away, but accessible by this lake on the left hand side that we just can't see because of the cliff faces. Again, creative tendencies, we don't know whether things are drawn to scale or not. And then the final shot we have in terms of the wild area is this shot here of just next to this big fat rock, it would seem, facing south, again similar to the shot before, with your Beware and your Wobbuffets, getting a nice shot of a few different bridges and so on and so forth, again giving us a shape and idea of the area that we came through, and it's actually quite large, so hopefully it plays out quite well. That's the wild area, however, so we have more to explore than just the wild area. We don't want to just look at the wild area, because there's the rest of the game, basically, the rest of the game to explore. So we're going to head back down south, and then we're going to round up to this city that we skipped. Now, we've seen a fair bit of this city. It was a city in the cinematic that revealed the starters. We assume it looks similar at least, and we've seen a few different areas in the city itself. We're going to start off at the entrance here and look at this, what we see in the latest trailer of the main street, I would assume it is. So you can see the clock tower down in the front, Pokemon Center to the side, and a few different shops off to the left and the right. Now, obviously this is pretty cool and all. You can see the city, you can see the different areas and so on and so forth, different designs, because we have these rotating metal discs and so on and so forth. So I'm going to refer to it as the mechanical city, because I think that's what it is, mechanical. But what we're going to focus on is right at the back, just past that train line. You can see the train line running through the centre of the city actually. Just past the train line you can see there's an icon on the building behind it, and that is a red and white icon. And that's actually the icon for the gyms in the game, so we can only assume there is a gym in this city. And if we have a look, if we switch back to the map itself, if we have a look here, you can see this dome area with chimneys all sort of around it, with obviously the clock tower right behind it. That seems to be a stadium, because obviously all of our gym battles are going to be in stadiums this game, so that seems to be a gym there, but we'll revisit that later on in the video. Looking at some other angles of this city though, we do get a second similar one looking across at the side rather than just directly on. So you can see again the clock tower, the train line, and a big tall building in the back left side as well, which is I guess standing above the rest, so maybe that'll have some significance in terms of things you can do. Maybe as a battle tower of some sort, who knows exactly. But that's an idea of the train line running through the centre of the city as well. Now this is where things get a bit more complicated with the viewpoints in this city. So we're going to look at the left hand side here, and there's actually one we saw in the original trailer, which is of the female protagonist running along what looks to be a lower section of the city. You can see the train line in the back, so it confirms that we are sort of towards the front of the city here, and you can see obviously a building to the left and some sort of pathway running along the bottom, because with the city itself you can see there's like a moat running around it almost, or at least running around the left hand side. It's probably the river. You can see the river comes in from the top of the city, heads down the left side, and then finally circles around the bottom to head back where we came from in the wild area. So that seems to be where it is, because again running over a bridge of sorts here, so obviously some sort of gully running through the centre of the city. So that's one there, but the next one is where it gets a bit more confusing, and it took me a while to actually place these images, because I don't know if it makes full sense. So we see here we have an image of a Wobbuffet playing, and also an image of the protagonist on some stairs. Now if we enhance the Wobbuffet image, you can see on the left side we have those chimneys which are being used in this city, so we know it's most likely this city because of the chimney shape and the chimney design. They wouldn't have to mix them up. However, you can see that in the further back there's a Pokemon Center, which doesn't make too much sense because there is already a Pokemon Center in the city that we've seen, and that was in the initial entrance. They're not the same one, because they're facing different directions basically. So it's either that the city is so big you need two Pokemon Centers, or maybe it's blocked off somehow and you want to make it two separate cities, or something like that. It's like an upper and a lower area, because obviously this screenshot is taken up next to the wall rather than down on the ground. Who knows exactly, but you can see also in the top right of that image there is a tall building, which I think is that tall building at the top left of the city. As well as that, if we then look at the second one briefly, you can see that in the very top left of that screenshot there is another Pokemon Center, or possibly the same one, because I believe it's a case of the second screenshot is to the right and down a bit of the first one, and obviously it's stairs going down and up, so this might be how you get from level to level in the city itself. As I said, they were a bit confusing to place, and I had to sort of stare and look at the map and compare stuff a lot. And of course the left hand side of the city wall doesn't actually have chimneys on it. I'm assuming that's because they were left out, possibly artistic design again, but we can't be entirely sure. So it's an interesting one, but we'll move on because we have more important things to look at than just one city. So before we go any further though, there seem to be two. We've spoken about the bridges on the right hand side before. One of them here is the train bridge, which obviously heads into this mountain, and we'll see again later. The second one is a pedestrian bridge heading across here. Now it doesn't seem to go anywhere until you look at the cliff face here, and you can see there's actually a small cave entrance. So this looks to be a way you go into a cave here. Whether this cave comes out anywhere, it doesn't seem to, because there's nowhere near enough basically, apart from maybe this cave up here, which we'll look at later on. So it might be the fact that there's a nice long cave route along this mountain range. It's one possibility, of course. Otherwise it's just a dead end cave, which we have seen before, and there are plenty in the Pokemon series, so it's always possible. Heading west out of the city though is a bit more interesting, because we come to one route here, and also we have the train track, the train line running in here. So we saw the train just now head into this mountain and seemingly disappear. So it might be that it heads in here, does some stuff around here, and then ends up coming out here, and obviously then going through the city. Apart from that, I can't see how the train would get there, so that must be the case. Before we get to the train or anything like that though, there is a route. You can sort of see a pathway leading out of the city, which we'll look at now, because we actually seem to have some screenshots of it from the game. So you can see it's fairly like mountainous, hilly I suppose, and the route runs along between it. Plenty of Pokemon hang around in this route similarly. Gossifleur, Swirlix, Minccino, it seems to be at least, because these two screenshots look to be from the same area, although they almost look like the same area but slightly tweaked, because they're both crossroads, but there don't seem to be as many crossroads on the map. Again, might not be accurate though. But you can see in the main screenshot, in the very top left of it, not the very top left, but the very top, you can see just a few little chimneys peeking out, and that obviously is the factory I'm going to refer to it as in the background here. So if we briefly look at that, we haven't got any screenshots of it, but you can see some sort of factory or industrial unit because of the chimneys here. Now this might be related to the cave, which obviously we'll look at now, because further across to the side of this route we enter into a cave. Now I believe this cave to be the one we've seen in the trailers so far, and that's the glittery shiny gemmy cave, filled with lights and stuff like that. I don't know if they're actually gems or just lights, but they look shiny at least. So it's possible you go into this here, and it would make sense that there is a mine that does production next to a factory. Otherwise, you sort of, there's no point having a factory without anything for it to produce, and there's no point having a mining cave without actually a factory or something to handle it. So that's why I'm putting my bets on it being here, although of course you can't be entirely sure, 100% sure, because of the fact that there are two caves. You might have the other cave onto the right hand side, is one possibility, but who knows. There's also the fact that the train line that heads out of this cave, so if we head back to the main map, the train line that heads out seems to be a smaller train line than the main one that goes into here, you see. So this might be a minecart track that, shifts stuff in and out of the cave, because we saw in those screenshots there's actually a little minecart track heading inside the cave. In which case, where is the train coming from? Well, we did see the train in the city here, and here's the train line in the city. You wouldn't expect them to do too many turns in the city, because that would be crazy. There is one exit here, you can see, looking like a bridge over the water. There are a few pedestrian bridges, so maybe this is actually where the train comes in instead. We can't see any more of it, but we can just assume it heads into here and then comes out here somehow. Again, the map is just a nice summation of it. It's not meant to be fully accurate. So that's the mine, and that's the route here. So the other option for the cave is that we actually head through it, because if we look a bit further north, you can see just beyond this, I guess, mountain or hill range here, you can see a path that comes out seemingly from nowhere. This might be the exit of the cave. So you enter the cave on the left hand side here, you go through your different levels and basement floorings, and then you exit into this pathway here. Otherwise really there's nowhere to get to it, so you must be able to get to it somehow, unless there's like a hidden village there, which I doubt, because usually they show that thing on the map. So possibly this cave is like a path cave like Mount Moon, rather than a dead end cave like the Lost Cave, maybe? The Lost Cave? I'm trying to pick names off the top of my head. But anyway, this path comes out, and of course then we get to the good old fields of wheat. So we've got a couple of screenshots here, obviously a farming area of sorts, and a route leading down to the gym in the background. So there's not too much to say, apart from we have these rocks that are constantly led over, or not constantly, but led over here and there across the fields, which are quite interesting because they all have markings on it, and there are a few ones we'll see in a minute in the town. So we don't know what they're for. They might be similar to how in X and Y we had Geosenge Town, where there were those, I guess, standing stones in Geosenge, or near Geosenge Town. Didn't really play too much of a, they played into the lore a bit, but they didn't play too much of a role. They simply acted as a bit of, lore building. There might be a couple of NPCs here that say, oh yes, these markings are in the rock because our ancestors like to write into rocks. Who knows exactly, but maybe. We then head down to where the grass gym, the grass stadium is, I suppose you could call it, and this seems to be a town in itself. It's not too obvious just from looking at the map, but when you look at the in-game screenshots you can see that, yes, it's pretty much a town. There are more buildings on the map than you can see anyway. So here's the gym. You can see another rock on the side with a couple of different markings on it. Maybe there'll be some hidden language or something we have to decipher at some point, but we can't tell quite at the moment. I guess we'll have to see. There's not too much to say about the stadium apart from it's there. It's blocked off either side, so obviously you can't really go around it too much. But there are, as we saw previously, buildings dotted around it, so it's sort of the centerpiece of this town, seemingly a farming town. And we're actually going to backtrack very slightly to the building in front of it. Don't do that. To the building in what are you doing? To the building in front of it, because we have a little flower shop, I believe. And you can see it's actually here, because if you look at the very right of the image, there's the logo for the grass gym, so it's just in front of it here. Seems to be a flowery plant shop, and you see Gossifleur in front of it. Someone's blocking the door, so maybe it's a case of this is where you unlock the farming area of the game. Who knows what they'll do, but it seems to be a different building just from normal, but we'll find out eventually, of course. Apart from this, we are going to head a bit further up around the left hand side of the town here to this big hill with this marking on it, because we have an in-game screenshot of that, as I've mentioned, or as I have now. You can see the character here looking over this large area. You can't seem to access it. It looks to just be a decoration. Of course, it's a reference to the UK and how we have chalk, I think it is, in hills, in patterns on the white horse in the hill, for example, stuff like that. It's obviously a reference there. But we'll look at it maybe at another time, because it might be a reference to a legendary, which could be interesting. Could be interesting indeed. But heading back to the map here, in terms of where else you can go from the city, it doesn't seem to be too many areas. There's no sort of path leading north. There are just loads of fields. Again, possibly you could go through the fields. Who knows exactly? But there is a path heading off to the left-hand side, or to the right-hand side rather, to the east. If you go along it slowly, you can see there is a random house right in the centre. Doesn't seem to be part of a town or anything. It's just there. So clearly it's a special house of sorts. And there does seem to be a little lake and a little pond just in front of it with a maybe a route goes around it. It's quite interesting because it doesn't seem to be too much there. But the house presumably is meant for some sort of purpose, so we'll find out eventually. Heading further to the east though, we cross the bridge and we head and actually reach to this new town. But before we get there, we have another in-game screenshot, because I think we can place something in-game here. So we have a little in-game screenshot of the protagonist on a route, and they come into a battle with a player, well not player, but an NPC. Now there aren't too many clues to go off here because it's just trees in the background. So the trees indicate we're in some sort of wooded area, or at least a path lined by trees. But if we look at the very, very top right of the image, you can see bricks for a few of those trees. Now I think those bricks are of the railway line running along next to it. I think that's the case, because it makes sense. You can see there is some foliage above and below the route in terms of the map, and obviously the brick type, I suppose, is similar to that of the railroad running over the path. So that's one possibility there I'm going with, and I guess we'll find out when the games eventually release. But then we move further across into the actual city or town we have here next to the sea. I believe this is the only coastal city in the whole game, whole region, which is quite unique. At least it's not Hone, for example. But there are a few things here. We have standard buildings. Again, there's no Pokemon Center on the map, but it surely will be in there in the game. Seems to be some sort of market stall here. Obviously there's a stadium, and then finally we have the lighthouse over on the far right hand side. And of course we do have a shot of that lighthouse in one of the trailers, one of the I believe the direct itself. You can see the lighthouse there working away at being a lighthouse. Not too much more to say about that, it's just there. So again, that'll be a cinematic shot of when you first enter the city, or maybe there's a little quest to actually turn the lighthouse on. That's another possibility there. But apart from that, the only other thing to look at in this town, as I mentioned earlier, was this entrance here. The road enters into this cave and doesn't seem to come out again. So possibly it enters in and goes all the way down this mountain range, and then finally comes out over here to meet up with this city here. Possibly. It seems to be the case. I mean, Otherwise we just have 2 dead-end caves, and generally those aren't that common because they're not very interesting. So possibly it might be the fact that you can choose which way you go. You either go left from the mechanical city and go through that cave there and head to the grass gym, or you can go right and go along through this mountain range and end up coming out here to the water gym. I'm assuming it's a water gym because it's next to the sea, okay guys? I might be without saying, but I'll just remind you in case. So that's basically the only place we can go here. We can't go any further. You know, there is the railroad does head up past here, but doesn't seem to stop at this city. You can see there is a small platform just next to it behind these buildings here, but it's not the same station type as we've seen elsewhere, so I guess we know, but of course there's always a possibility in the end of the day. So the only other place we can go from this point is through the wild area up to this city here, which I'm going to refer to as Castletown. I don't know if that's going to be correct, but I'm thinking this is where the royalty of the region is going to reside. Because if we look at the entranceway, we have a screenshot of the character entering through, and you can see them looking up at this large main structure in the centre of the city. They have banners sort of hanging down from the building itself, which just screams like royalty to me. So I'm feeling like if there is a king of the Galar region, or a queen of course, this is where they'll be residing, and they'll be in this area, especially because the top of the city, top of the town, also looks to be a crown. If we look at that here, you can see it's a crown shape of sorts on top, so maybe that's the case there. We do have another shot of this city as well from a different angle. You can see from probably the right hand side, you can see looking over again this main big structure in the centre, but also on the right hand side we have a cathedral possibly of sorts. You can see it's a weird design there, so something's going on there, we don't exactly know what. The other thing that might be going on is these, the long, as I said, the structure in the centre is a bit weird. You have the long, I guess, bridges almost with towers on the end of them, and I can't see how they're going to be there and not do something with them, so I'm envisioning them coming together at some point during the game and activating an ultimate weapon or something like that. I don't know exactly, but that's the feeling I'm getting from them, so we'll see whether or not that's confirmed eventually, but yeah, we'll see. But we are going to head from this city and go to the west first. Rather than go to the west straight away there, we are going to look at something in the city, and that is this other tower on the side here. We haven't got anything to look at this at all, but we have got a battlefield in front of this, so maybe there'll be some sort of battle there at some point. But in terms of what the tower is, it doesn't look to be a gym because it's not large enough to be a gym, because we have to have the audiences, so maybe it'll just be like a side thing. It does have a dragon design sitting atop it, and that is the entrance to the city as well, of a dragon, so maybe there'll be something to do with that, maybe like a dragon tower where you can face some dragons or something along those lines, but it's interesting at least. It's like a side thing inside the city. If we actually then head to the west though, we head over a little bridge to exit, and then we come across first these diglets in the wall, and we have seen this screenshot from the games themselves of diglets, as a statue basically, and being, I don't know whether I'd say worshipped as gods or whether maybe the diglets help them do something. There might be some lore to it, but it is interesting enough to see that's the path we're headed along past these diglet statues to this next city. So we can see here the entrance to the city is a bit of a town is probably better, but it's a very interesting town because you can see we have almost like buildings are stacked on top of one another. They don't have any discernible separation. We have buildings of different colours all on top of one another, and of course then behind it is like a second section on top of a cliff, so maybe you have to walk up and down these buildings to actually get to the top of the town. That would be my guess. And of course behind that town we have another stadium. Ground or rock type would probably be my guess. Again, we'll revisit the gyms later on. There seems to be a path heading to the east from this gym, or from the stadium, which maybe heads inside a forest here, you can see. Doesn't really give us more indication than that, but the path just sort of trails off, and maybe there'll be a forest here. If we head the other way though and go to the west, you can see there's a few different levels we head up and head to this. I don't know what this is. It looks to be an entrance to a cave, but I do not know what the different colours are all about. Maybe they're cogs. I can see a few different cogs maybe in the wall, so maybe there's some sort of mechanical opening of the door, something like that. But I'm going to assume generally it's an entrance to a cave here, maybe with a forest behind it, and then through that you can enter into this town at the top. Similarly, however, you can reverse it around, and this path up here to the forest could lead you through the forest into the city up here, into the town up here, and this thing on the left hand side might be something entirely different, maybe related to something else. Who knows exactly? It looks to be really weird until we get some screenshot of it in the game. I have no idea what it is. Mechanical would be my guess, but it seems to have like a shield pattern on it as well, so it could always be something to do with legendaries too. Who knows? But up past this forest we can see we have another city here with another stadium. Now my guess for the type here would be fairy because of the mushrooms. We have like glowing mushrooms and that obviously just screams fairy to me. I guess you could think psychic, but fairy is definitely my first choice for that. And we have obviously a little lake in the town you can see there as well, but no screenshots of course, otherwise I'd be showing you them. So we haven't actually seen anything up to this left hand side at all apart from the Diglett statues, so plenty left for us to see. Apart from that stadium here, there's a few like gingerbread cottages is what I refer to them as, which are quite interesting, blending in with the theme of the area I suppose, but nothing extra we can actually talk about there. So the only other thing to do is head to the east from the castle town and head over this bridge here, which leads us over to a split in the road. Now we're going to go through the bottom because, you know, why not go through the bottom, which leads us to, looks to be a little cave here right in the centre, nothing humongous, almost like the Rust Turf Tunnel, but it might be a little cave section. It is a road, so you'd assume there would be no wild Pokemon to harass you, but it could always be the case. It could always be the case. We never know, of course. Leads us over here to another town of sorts, which, I mean, really, what is this? It looks like a storage containers just like stacked on top of one another. A very cramped town at least, with a main building of sorts from the roof at least, but we can't actually tell much about it. It's just a block of buildings basically, so really not too much to go off of there. But we can head north from it into the icy wastelands. We get a new screenshot finally to look at here, and that's of us battling a karate man on the lake. You can see us, a protagonist entering into battle with him, probably up to the left hand side here against the cliff, but there may be different areas in terms of the ice lake to explore because it seems to be quite a wide route. It's not like a single route where you just follow the path. It seems to be quite sprawling, so maybe you can go to the left and follow up and go straight away there, or maybe there's a bit to the right and a bit to explore before you go out to the sea. A few different options there. Of course we can then head north out of the area as I've said, and we have got a screenshot to symbolise this. It seems to be at least from here. You can see we have a protagonist running up between two hills, running up into a valley covered by snow, which seems to be this pathway leading up right here towards the city. Speaking of the city, here it is. You can see we don't have much to go off of because it seems to be almost a walled-in city, or a city that's got multiple levels or something like that the map doesn't really show off too well. But it does seem to be a central square of sorts because we have that screenshot to show. And you can see that the protagonist running around this fountain in the centre with a few different buildings around it, but not too much to go off of apart from that. If we just quickly enhance it though and have a look a bit deeper, you can see there are a few banners on the sides of these buildings, one being a crown, one being a tower, and then one being a flower, and then the other one I can't quite make out is the light blue banner. I can't quite make it out from where I am, from what we can see. But you can see the very top left, not very top left, but at the top you can see just behind that building there's sort of like a Colosseum building almost. You can see the spikes of the stadium, which seems to be behind it. So you'll have your main buildings for the town, you'll have this Colosseum sort of thing, and then finally behind it you have the stadium, which we can assume is an ice type stadium, ice type gym, because why would it not be? Why would it not be? Let's be real now. So heading down south down the other route this time, rather than going across an ice lake, we seem to come to this thing, which I have no idea what it is. It seems to be like a walled area with rocks and walls inside it, and then not much else. So I couldn't even guess what this is. I would assume maybe just a route, but I don't know why it'd be walled in. Possibly walled in to keep something in, I don't know. But maybe just a haven for rock type Pokemon and ground type Pokemon, so you can make sure to catch some new guys there. Of course that then just leads out and takes us back over to the castle town. Now there are a few things a bit north of the castle town to look at. The first of these is this hill here. Now this it looks very similar to the mountain, the volcano, or whatever we called it back in Alola on the first island, because of course it's got like a base at the top we could stand on. I don't know whether we'll be able to access it or not, but it's interesting rather than just, you know, having the end of this curved rock. The other thing to look at over on the left hand side here is another lake just behind the castle town. You can see hidden away here. Whether we were able to access it or not, I don't know. It seems like maybe, because why would you have a lake there? But doesn't seem to be a way to get there. Similarly, there doesn't actually seem to be a way to get behind the castle town anyway, because there's no clear route or pathway leading out the back of it. There does, however, seem to be a tunnel leading, you know, from this big mountain there, but maybe we're able to get there, maybe not. Who knows exactly? If we do head north past this though, we do see the train tracks suddenly appear out of nowhere. So the last time we saw the train was over here, heading into this mountain here, and we didn't actually see it come back out at all. It just sort of flew under the radar and seemingly just like popped out here. So maybe this is what the entrance is for. Maybe the train actually ends up in this city somewhere and we just can't see it from the map, and it ends up heading north from it and passing through here. Maybe the map's just missing some things, but it ends up here, and you can see another similarly styled station to the stuff we saw back in the first village, as well as also by the wild area. So that's why I'm thinking these are the only stations, because the stations are of a specific design. Usually in Pokemon games they like to keep a shared design. Pokemon Center, Pokemart, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but you get the idea. So maybe there are other ones, maybe the station's just not on the map for them. Who knows exactly? So it seems like we'll be able to take the train up here, and then we'll have a nice snow route heading up this seemingly a mountain, it would seem. A circle, just a choice probably, entering into this large walled area. Now, this is the weird part, because it's a huge city, look at it, but it seems to have several different things in it. So for example, we'll first head to the right hand side where there seems to be a gym. This is another stadium, so we can assume a gym. So that's gym number 1 in this city here. Typing wise, we'll look at that later on, because it doesn't seem to be anything too clear. Then apart from that, we have a central building here, which seems to be a formal building exactly, and past that we have, of course, what we can assume to be the Pokemon League at the top of this spire. Can't be sure, but I'm going to assume that's what it is. So we have like a gym and the Pokemon League in the same place, unless there's like a route behind, you know, between these two, and something has to be done there. Victory Road is another question, because there doesn't seem to be a cave anywhere to take you through a Victory Road. So unless there's like a tower where trainers are actually, you know, gathering to battle, and you have to fight your way up through the tower to actually get to the Pokemon League in the first place, I would certainly, I guess, support that. It would make a change, as long as it was still challenging and not just a case of walking up to the Pokemon League. Victory Road in the past has offered sort of 2 challenges, one being the actual hard battles without being able to, well, you can still go back and heal, but it would be a pain, and 2 being the environmental challenges, so like waterfalls and having to do a few little puzzles here and there. They could definitely do puzzles as part of the tower, but since we're past the age of HMs, there doesn't seem to be too much of a need to do an environmental challenge nowadays, so we'll see what the tower's about, whether it's just a tower. But back to the city itself, you can see a couple of different areas shooting off. Whether these end up being separate routes, there is a sign here which would indicate maybe a separate route, but there's no clear basis of it. The left side seems to be more of a commercial area, because there are adverts of some sort on these buildings, and then we have back here a large circular thing. It's the London Eye. Okay, this is London here. Okay, this is the London Eye. Who knows exactly what it's going to be about? Maybe it's a battle facility, so you go in, and similar back into Black and White where there was a Ferris wheel, maybe you go in and you enter a capsule and you can battle a certain amount of players, you know, NPCs or whatever in there. Could be interesting. They call it the battle wheel, probably, or battle eye maybe, if you want to give a reference to the London Eye. Who knows exactly. But then the final thing to look at is there's another large building over here, quite regal. It's got another sort of clock tower at the top, which might be the basis of Big Ben. There is obviously a similar one down in the Mechanical City, which we've seen previously, down here, which might be Big Ben. This might be Big Ben up here though. I think they're both maybe having a bit of basis from both, but this one seems to have a bit more accuracy, I suppose. The other thing to mention though is we actually have a screenshot from outside this. Yep, not too obvious, but it's actually of the Corviknight taxi. So here you see him having a sit on top of his weird taxi thing, and you can see the building in the background has 3 layers to it. It's of a orangey red stone with blue, black in between, which is exactly what we have in the map itself. So we can't really glean anything more about the building itself because it's just a side bit, but maybe it will be a building for, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. We got like loads of big buildings in the same place, whereas usually they'd be spread out across different cities. So it's interesting, and it's obviously a lot together at the top of the world basically. So we've got a gym, we've got, assuming the Pokemon League, a battle facility, and then something else here. So yeah, that's sort of the top of the map. We can't really go anywhere else. Doesn't seem to be any routes or anything leading off. So where are we going to go now? Well, we're actually going to go back to the start, yes. Back to the beginning again, all the way back, all the way down south, all the way down here, past the wild area, to our house. Because there actually is a second path heading off here. You guys might have seen that earlier in the video and thought, wait Matt, you missed it. I didn't miss it, I didn't miss it, it's here. Obviously, I very much doubt you're going to be able to enter this area at the start of the game, because it would be a waste of an area basically. So I'm assuming it's going to be blocked off of some sort, but we have a forest to explore here. So we have one image of a forest from the trailers. It's just of a forest, there's nothing too impressive. A misty forest, a misty murky forest, hence why I've put it down here, because we seem to have probably just clouds, but you know, more mist over it than other forests. The only other forest we spotted was up between the Rock Gym City and the Fairy Gym City, so maybe it's up there, but yeah, it's already a shot in the dark either way. One thought about the forests though is in the reveal video for Zacian and Zamazenta, we did see them both in a forest. So maybe they are forest-based creatures, and the actual, you know, climax of the game or interaction with them will be inside a forest. It gives us two options since we've seen two forests. One being up between the Rock and the Fairy cities, or one being back by your house, which might be poetic as such, having to return home to defeat the enemy, whatever the enemy may be, or whatever the plot turns out to be. So it's possible there in either one. I think it'd be nice to have them right back by your house though. Would make a, you know, you might be living next to the forest where this big strong legendary Pokemon have been living their whole lives. Who knows exactly. So just a thought there. That brings us to the end of all of the screenshots that I gleaned, apart from one. There was one that I just could not place, or two really. The first one you can see here is actually the opening of the trailer for the Direct. You can see we have a train here, we have a Pokemon Center, and then we have, you know, houses and a station in the background. You can see the station is the same design as the other ones, with a clock tower and, you know, houses there. Now, I can't place this at all. I cannot place it at all. I'm going to show you a second image though, and this is of Leon, okay? Similarly, I was trying to place this image, and I think it's actually the same place. So if we compare them side by side, you can see that in Leon's picture at the bottom left, there is a train, which indicates he's at the train station. So if we have a look and compare the two images together, you can see he would be stood in front of the building that is the train station, you know? So I think it's the same place, it's just now a case of placing it on the map. Now you might be thinking, oh, it's obviously the first town we come to, the very first town. It's not though, is it? If we have a look at the screenshot we saw of the very first town, next to it you can see there is a train station, but the Pokemon Center is not in the same place. The buildings are different, they're not, you know, sort of like ranked, they're separate and detached. So where is it? You know, it doesn't seem to be anywhere I can see in this map. You know, if we have a quick look over the map here, so we have the first town, which is not where it is. Then we scroll up, we have the wild area, we've, you know, obviously seen that. It's not going to be a mechanical city because we would see the walls for that. It's not going to be up here by the grass gym because we've already seen that and does not have the same type of houses. It's not going to be over here by the, I mean, it could be possibly, but again, the house design on the map is different from the one we can see in the screenshots. Similarly, heading up, it's not going to be in the snow area. It's probably not going to be in this huge block of houses. Maybe, I don't know actually. The house block might be similar, it might just be how it was crafted on the map itself. However, we have a problem here is that there's no train station. The train doesn't seem to come here. We need houses similar to that and train station. As I said, there doesn't seem to be any extra train stations apart from back in our first town, our first, you know, village I suppose, up by the wild area, possibly inside the mechanical city, and then up north in the snow area. So it's hard to place this one. If you guys have got any ideas on where it could be, let me know down below of course, because it's a really tricky one. I don't know, I really don't know. We'll move on from stuff we don't know though to stuff we do know and stuff we can figure out. So looking at gyms, so we come back to this. So we spotted a few different gyms as we've gone through this whole, you know, set of map, I suppose. So let's pick them out here. You can see these are the gyms we've picked out. We have the grass gym, which we knew already, the gym inside the mechanical city thanks to the logo. We also have the rock gym, the fairy gym, the water gym, the ice gym presumably, and then this other red gym which has a different design to the other ones but seems to be a gym up in the top there. So where is the 8th gym? Assuming we're getting 8 gyms, it would only make sense. I don't know why they would break protocol like that if they're bringing gyms back. So where is it? Well, I believe it's going to be in the very centre in the castle town right here. You can see in the centre of this town we have this large structural building which seems to be hollow. It's got loads of windows, sort of like a coliseum, and we do need that large area like a stadium so the audience can watch. So I believe that's the stadium of Castletown. It's just hidden away inside the main building. Yeah, simple as that really. I think that's where the 8th gym is going to be. The order of the gyms, I'm not going to do too much into it because I think it's variable, to be honest, depending on what areas are open to us in the game. I do believe the red gym will be the final gym, although it might be the fact that the castle gym is the last gym, so you have to battle the king or something, but who knows. Typing is something we can look at, so we've already gone for a few that we can pretty much guess at quite easily. Obviously we know the grass gym is a grass gym. The rock gym is probably a rock or ground type. It could be a fighting type though, but I'm going to go for rock or ground because of the basis. Fairy is a pretty good shot, I'd say, because of the glowing mushrooms. The water gym is the only water-based town, so it's a pretty good shot. Similarly, the ice gym, it's in an icy area. And that just leaves us with 3 other gyms. The one in the mechanical city, the one in Castletown, and the one up north in the very last city. So I'm going to go and start off with the mechanical city. And I think it might be normal or electric type. So the design of the city itself is very bland. It's very sort of muted in colours. They're all orangey, browny, grey sort of thing. So normal I think would work there. However, normal gyms are a bit So I'm going for electric because as another option, because the fact that there's obviously some production going on, electricity making of some sort is another option. A third would be steel because of the fact that it's mechanical and we see a lot of stuff there, so that's another third option there, although it seems like you get there pretty early in the game, so steel might be quite a hard type for some people to overcome, so they tend to leave those for later in the game. And then we'll look at the Castletown one. So I've put steel here on the video, however through the course of recording the video, I'm also thinking of another option. I was thinking steel because of the design of the entire town itself. It looks to be very rocky and stony and so on and so forth, so I went for steel, but I think it might be dragon because there is a dragon head on the entrance to the city, there is a tower with a dragon on top of it. It would only make sense. However, if the tower with the dragon on top of it tends to be a separate thing, then maybe not. So I'd say steel or dragon is a good choice for this one. And then for the final one, right at the top, is even more confusing because it doesn't seem to have any theming at all. It's red, it's got some frills rather than the spikes, and it seems to be quite clean in terms of its design, but no real, it's not in a rocky area, it's not in a icy area, it's not in a water area, so it's in a city area. So the 2 choices I've picked out are fire and psychic. It's fire for the design really because it's red in colour, but also psychic because I feel like psychic could work in a large city area, similar to how back in Sylph City back in the original games we had that there. That would be one possibility, but really it's a stab in the dark there, I'd say. The other options you could think about for there might be fighting because it's like in a city and you could have a dojo for something like that, but yeah, pretty much a stab in the dark at this point, but there's a few ideas there. Of course you guys can let me know your own thoughts and guesses for the gym types down there, and whether you think there's actually any other gyms I've missed here or something like that, or any buildings you think are going to have particular purposes or something like that at all, or just any thoughts about the map whatsoever. If there's anything I've missed or anything you think of yourself, do let me know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this because it's been an hour, so if you're still here, damn, that's all I've got to say. I need to rest my voice now because it's going to go soon, but yeah, thank you guys for watching, especially if you've made it this far, really appreciate it. Yeah, I guess I'll be seeing you next time. Got some other video planned on Dynamax, new Pokemon and stuff like that, so I wouldn't say be sure to check them out, but if you want to, you can check them out. I'm not going to hold it against you. So yeah, I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching, of course, and yeah, goodbye my friends.